Last year in free agency, the running back core was the most talked about position in all the moves. You had Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles, and you also had Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, and many more moves that were significant last year. This year, it seems like the wide receiver core is the biggest talking point. And so it has me wondering, first of all, what are all of the moves that have so far happened among all wide receivers in the NFL? And what are some moves that should, that could, and I hope happen? And this is why this video specifically is talking about wide receivers and the whole free agency market with them. That's what we're going to be doing. We're continuing our free agency run as we inch closer and closer to the draft. And so in this episode, all eyes on receivers. Let's get started. Keep in mind, I'm recording this on a Tuesday, and these videos come out on Friday. Anything can happen in between now and then, so I want you guys to keep in mind that I will not know certain wide receiver moves that happen in the next 3 days. So if I miss something, if something happens and it's not in here, I'm sorry. Without further ado, let's get started, and we're first going to look over all the moves that have happened so far, and then we'll transition into the moves I want to see happen. Let's do this. Right out the gate, I said the Commanders need to get started. Obviously, Deebo Samuel, that trade and getting them big for Jaden Daniels, that's the first move to happen, and to me, still one of the more significant moves. Tampa Bay also re-signed Chris Godwin, which was huge to keep that core intact with him and Mike Evans. You basically have the Buccaneers offense ready to roll. If you still want to make a move at the tight end position, you can, but all the key aspects are locked in and ready to go for this next season. You also had the Texans trading and getting Christian Kirk to go along with a very loaded wide receiver core with Nico Collins and Tank Dell and maybe Stephon Diggs, but we'll get to that. This is an interesting move. I didn't think the Texans needed to improve here, but they did, and it's actually a fair and interesting one to say the least. Darius Slayton also re-signed with the Giants. This one's not as big, but still, he's been a long tenured wide receiver for New York and is currently third on their depth chart, which is good, but it just depends on who's going to be throwing the football for the Giants. Otherwise, this is basically, it's nothing. You also have Davante Adams signing with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, this move by the Rams is good, but I wish they still kept Cooper Kupp, who also signed with the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm going to talk about both of these. Davante Adams is, I think, on the back end of his prime, which means he doesn't have a lot of great years, which means Puka will be the #1 wide receiver. And for the Seahawks, obviously getting Cooper Kupp was a big move. I think this was significant, but also kind of pointless because you basically got rid of a mediocre quarterback and a great wide receiver for a mediocre quarterback and another great wide receiver. So did they improve? I don't really think so. I think Cooper Kupp is a better wide receiver, but the whole quarterback situation is still the same to me. The Ravens signed DeAndre Hopkins to go along with Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. That's a good upgrade. He's kind of out of his prime, but it's still a nice weapon for Lamar Jackson to have. And plus, we already know that it's mostly going to be key focused on Jackson and Henry in the backfield. But to have someone like this to go along with a young star in Zay Flowers, and when Bateman's healthy, he's actually a really viable weapon. This was a great pickup by Baltimore. They've actually done really well in the offseason. The Seahawks traded DK Metcalf to Pittsburgh to go along with George Pickens. That is really nice. Obviously, DK was probably unhappy that they got rid of Geno Smith and they were kind of cleaning house, so he wanted to get out of there. Didn't really want a poor quarterback to be thrown to him because he didn't know who his quarterback was going to be. The problem is Pittsburgh doesn't have one either. As it stands, Mason Rudolph is starting quarterback. Are they going to get Aaron Rodgers? Are they going to keep Russell Wilson? I mean, what's going to happen here? So there's a lot of question marks surrounding that, but whoever the quarterback is going to be for Pittsburgh has two solid weapons, if you can also keep George Pickens, who has made notions that he wants to leave Pittsburgh midway or towards the end of last season. But DK, George Pickens, that's a nice wide receiver core. Just get yourself a quarterback. The Chiefs also re-signed Juju Smith-Schuster, who, despite him not being the #1 wide receiver, I like that he's on the core. I think that Kansas City is better with him there. I mean, that's how it was when they won Super Bowl 57. I think Juju is a solid receiver, not a superstar, but just solid. And the Chiefs also re-signed Marquise Brown or Hollywood Brown. I think that was a big move for them to kind of keep that wide receiver core solid. Rashid Rice, if he starts this season, and also having Xavier Worthy. They have a solid core, and Travis Kelce's coming back. There's still a lot of pieces need to be done, but those were two solid weapons to have to return to the Chiefs. The Chargers also re-signed Mike Williams, who was on the team 2 years ago. This is a good move because I was questioning why Justin Herbert didn't have as many weapons last year as I thought he should have. And so they're making some moves to revamp that wide receiver core. Obviously, there's a lot more that I wish would be done, but until then, I think right now the Chargers, their free agency has been kind of weird. So this is a move where I'm kind of like, meh, they still need to do more. And then along with keeping Jamar Chase, which I thought was just going to be a no-brainer, the Bengals signed T. Higgins to a larger deal than just having a simple tag, which was great. They signed both on the same day, multi-year contracts. The Bengals wide receiver core remains intact. So now they can start to look other places in free agency to improve on the offensive line and the defense right now. Good thing locking those two up for multiple years gives Joe Burrow the weapons he needs. And those right now, of all the receivers we're going to be talking about, are confirmed. Now it's time to get to what I want to see from other receivers. Of the receivers that I want to stay with their teams, the first is Deontay Johnson staying with the Baltimore Ravens. He's currently on the roster as we speak, but he's kind of like he's there on the roster, but not on the depth chart. So his future is in question. I think that the Ravens should keep him as a number 4 or number 5. You already have your 3 main receivers, but he also is a very solid option, and I would recommend that the Ravens keep him for depth. And the other one is Stephon Diggs staying with Houston to go along with Christian Kirk, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. I don't know if Dell's going to play this year because of the surgery, but to have the other two and Stephon Diggs, that would be ginormous. A great core for CJ Stroud to work with. And those are the 2 receivers I want to stay with their specific teams. Now, let's get to the fun part. Seeing where some receivers should go where I want to see them go. This doesn't mean I believe they're actually going to go to these places, but these are the places I would hope to see them, arrive and make those teams better. First one I want to see is Amari Cooper signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars have a young core, kind of. Brian Thomas is a great receiver. Gabe Davis is another great one, but they need more. Amari Cooper going to the Jaguars right now would be good for Jacksonville, since Jacksonville lost some key weapons like Evan Ingram, and going from making the playoffs, like the divisional round, to barely missing it the year after and then just absolutely flopping. Trevor Lawrence is under the gun and he needs something big. I think the Jaguars need to do him a favor, get Amari Cooper, and create a nice trio of wide receivers for him to throw to. Obviously there's still some work, but this is the ideal spot I think Amari Cooper can go. The second thing I want to see Brandon Cooks, who's currently on the Dallas Cowboys, go to Denver Broncos, because I think that you need to start giving Bo Nix some weapons outside of Courtland Sutton. He's really the only big wide receiver there. Yes, Marvin Mims is there, but I only consider Courtland to be the significant receiver. And for a young quarterback like Bo Nix, you need to do what Washington is doing and get him some more weapons. I love what the Commanders are doing. Right now, the Broncos, they're not hitting free agency the way they should be hitting it, which is giving Bo Nix the weapons he deserves, because he's going to be on this smaller rookie contract. You can make some room for some other weapons and some running backs because they have lost a lot of pieces, more than they have gained. So yeah, Brandon Cooks could make sense being a veteran wide receiver. You could put him on the Broncos to give Bo Nix just a little more confidence going into his sophomore year. So Geno Smith is going to be the quarterback for the Raiders, and right now his best receiver is Jacoby Myers, which I like Jacoby, but I like him as a number 2. I don't like him as a number 1. And obviously the Raiders, they lost Devontae Adams midway through the season last year, which means they're in need to get a big receiver. Now they could go into the draft and pick up Arizona's receiver, but I think they should make a legitimate offer to get Keenan Allen to join the team. Now, I understand Keenan Allen's probably not in his prime anymore. He's probably on the back end of it. The way I view it, Keenan Allen with Geno Smith, the Raiders need to get something, and I don't know how much leverage they actually have, so Keenan Allen makes the most sense. It's kind of like the Broncos getting Brandon Cooks. It's like a veteran receiver that should spark something with the Raiders, and if you were to still go after a wide receiver in the draft, you could also have a mentor. So I think that Keenan Allen being a Raider would make a lot of sense. Obviously, this isn't a move from the Chargers to the Raiders, which would just be a betrayal. He was with the Bears, and I think that the Bears can cut him loose because I think having DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, I believe they can they can let Keenan Allen go and it wouldn't be that big of a problem. They have a lot of weapons there. It's not a terrible loss. So the Raiders can try to go after someone like him. I think the Raiders definitely are going to be active in the free agency market. I just don't know if they are going to attract a lot of pieces. This is probably one of their best bets, and I think they should try it. With the Colts, which is another team that I'm surprised that they don't have a bigger need to address their wide receiver situation. I just don't like it. I do not think they have a strong core to go along with their quarterback who had a very rough second year. Now, obviously, he's coming off of injury, but still poor showing and had a lot of question marks around him as the future for the Colts. So the Colts need to get a receiver. I believe Robert Woods would actually be a very viable option. See, Woods, I understand that he's directly out of his prime and it's not a huge upgrade, but it's giving depth, I guess, veterancy to what I would consider a young and experimental core in Indianapolis. You obviously don't need to fix the backfield. You have Jonathan Taylor there. There's no need to go after anything there. Get Richardson another wide receiver. Now, you can go big, but I doubt they're going to. I think that a lot of what they need is veterancy, and Robert Woods would fit that perfectly. So the Seahawks cut bait with Tyler Lockett. Obviously, Lockett's a little bit older. I think that Lockett still has something to prove. He's now in that category with Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks as like a veteran receiver who is really good as a secondary option, never a number one. In my opinion, I would love to see him represent the Dallas Cowboys as their second wide receiver. If you're going to lose Brandon Cooks as the Cowboys, I think that Lockett would make a lot of sense. A veteran wide receiver to go along with a superstar like CeeDee Lamb would be good enough for Dak Prescott. You wouldn't have to go after another wide receiver in the draft. You could if you'd want. I don't think it is necessary if you can pick up someone like Tyler Lockett. But that's for the Cowboys to actually do something in free agency outside of just picking up some running backs who definitely do not help the running game if you're not going to have a good offensive line. I think Tyler Lockett being there would be great. Obviously, they have to work on that O-line like I just alluded to. This would be a cool spot for him to go to. And then the talk of the town is Tyreek Hill. Obviously, he demanded a trade directly after the Dolphins' final game against New York Jets, in which they lost. Now, the question mark is, where would Hill go? What could Tyreek Hill do? What type of team would need him? What type of team could get him? Thinking about it for a while. Because of who Tyreek Hill is, because of the type of talent he brings along and the publicity, I believe Tyreek Hill would make a lot of sense on the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers just lost Deebo Samuel, and could you imagine an offensive core with Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, and Kyle Juszczyk? That offense would light teams up. I would love to see Tyreek Hill go to San Francisco, and I think the 49ers could have the most leverage to get someone like him because the 49ers have had a poor free agency. They've lost so much. This would make up for most of their loss and be a definite upgrade over Deebo Samuel. So I would love to see Hill be a 49er. And that'll do it for today's episode. I know this is kind of a shorter episode. The last two episodes were over 40 minutes long. This one is a lot shorter because we're only covering a single position, and it's not like I'm going to go through every single wide receiver in free agency. I'm only going through the ones that I think would be significant and that I would like to pay attention to. Now, again, as I repeat, some of these moves, some of these players may have found teams that I'm talking about, like I would love to see go to another team or re-sign, or, players that have currently not made a decision of their future. So again, if those things happen, then just remember I recorded this on a Tuesday night. So I didn't get the news until after the fact. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. And if you do, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. And I hope you guys are excited with this free agency. A few other things that are happening in the world of sports. Baseball starts their regular season, I think, next week. March Madness starts later this week. So I hope you guys are, paying attention to those things. I don't know how long until the NBA playoffs. I know it's next month. So there's a lot of things that are going to be happening as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft. So pay attention to all of that. And yeah, I hope you guys go follow me on all my social medias. They're going to be in the links below. That'll do it for me. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care and goodbye.